Hey anglers, this is Juan Root of Juan Root Fishing. If you're into kayak fishing, backpack fishing, fly fishing, conventional fishing, all kinds of fishing, check out my Juan Root Fishing page on Facebook, and also check out my Juan Root Fishing YouTube channel. And then I also have a Juan Root Fishing Instagram as well. What I'm going to do today is actually give you some bonus content that's an addition to a blog that I recently wrote about a trip that I did into the mountains of north central Pennsylvania for native brook trout. It was an extremely successful trip, and part of that success was my rod line setup, and I wanted to share that with you. So I was fishing mostly dry fly when I was out there fishing, caught a ton of native brook trout, and mostly on elk-haired caddis. There were several different hatches going off. But the fish were eager to rise on about anything that you put on top. But you can use the system that I'm about ready to describe to you for dry fly fishing and for dry dropper fishing. It seems to be the best for those two techniques in small waters. So let me start out by talking about the rod that I use. This rod, the brand's not really super important, but the fact that it's glass, full flex, and a 3-weight. I think that anything 2, 3, or 4-weight is probably what you want to look at, because you're not dealing with a lot of big fish in these situations usually. I mean, let's face it, native brook trout in Pennsylvania, if you caught something like 11 inches to 15 inches, that would be like that would be kind of heaven as far as native brook trout go. So this 3-weight is great. It's a 7.5 footer. I think that's an important piece there too. It's a compromise. It's not super short, and it's not long, obviously. I've tried 10-foot rods and fishing small mountain creeks. The problem with a 10-foot rod is, yes, you can reach out, you can dabble things in there, but when you're working your way through brush, when you are trying to get a cast into a tight spot, and then you have to set the hook, it's really hard to have enough room a lot of times to set the hook with a longer rod. And so, I opt for the 7.5 footer. It seems to be a really nice compromise, in terms of length. Now with the 7.5 footer, I feel like I have enough length that I can actually, when I have open areas of the creek and I need to make a little bit longer cast, that I have a 7.5 foot rod, and I feel like I can comfortably make the casts I need to make. So that's my rod setup. The core of the system is really my line setup. So obviously I'm going to match the reel with the rod, and then fly line. I'm using a super fine fly line from Orvis. It's a little bit heavier. The head's heavier, I could tell, than some of the other lines I've used, like trout lines, floating trout lines. And so that, I think, is part of the system that works well, because I don't have to have a lot of line out to be able to load the rod in normal casting situations. So I like this heavier line for my 3-weight. You could even maybe overline your rod a little bit if you wanted to. Like on this 3-weight, I might overline to a 4. On the, attached to the loop of my floating line, I've got a furled leader. It's from Appalachian Furled Leaders. I've been using these leaders for about 3 years in this system, and I really like them. They got a loop here, and the leader is tapered. So it's tapering down, and it's 3 feet long, and it tapers down to a tippet ring. And so what this does is it adds weight to my system. So in many cases, when you're in a smaller water, you are trying to cast your fly with a 7.5 foot tapered, mono leader, and maybe 2 to 3 feet of line off the end of your rod. There's really not a lot of weight to deliver that fly where you want it to go. And it does tend to, even on on windy days or not windy days, it tends to be a little bit difficult. And I got frustrated by that. So when I switch to this, what this does is it allows me to only have a foot or 2 of line off the end of my rod and be able to flip my line into place. So I really like the weight that it adds to the system, and I like the fact that I can do a lot of water load casting with it because it sticks on the water. To get it to float, I use a wax that they sell, and you just apply the wax before you go fishing, and then basically it keeps the leader on top of the water. Off of the tippet ring, I tie in 2 to 3 feet of tippet material. Usually going in the fishing I'm doing from about 4, 5, or 6X. 6X is the smallest I'll use. I use a maximum of 3 feet, but I typically use 2 feet of tippet. 1 feet is, I think, too short. You got your tippet too close to the tapered leader, or the furled leader. 2 feet is about the sweet spot. 3 feet is the outside edge of that. I find that when I go 3 feet out, that I get, or more than 3 feet, I get a lot of hinging on this tippet with the fly, and that tends to maybe create situations where I get tangled, or it hinges so much the fly slaps down really hard. And so when you want a more delicate, presentation, it gets a little bit tougher to do that. So 2 feet is about the sweet spot off of this 3-foot furl leader. You still will get hinging, and you'll have to adjust your casting stroke a little bit. What I do is I tend to be really soft with the wrist at the end of the cast, and then I can get a gentle drop down. Now, it's not going to be the same as a tapered, mono leader. It's not going to be that delicate, but it's going to be more delicate if you take a little wrist off and you're using this system. I actually kind of like the slap down, I call it, the hinge and the flop down, because a lot of times when I'm fishing for brook trout, they're not as finicky, they're not as educated as some of the other fish in the bigger waters, where they see a lot of stuff thrown at them all year long. And so a lot of times I feel like it excites the fish when that, size 12, elk-haired caddis splashes down, or whatever you're using splashes down. I think it excites the fish and it triggers a reaction in a lot of instances. So you do have to be aware that one of the things I don't like about it is the hinging, but that can be resolved mostly by just taking a little bit off the wrist at the end of your cast stroke, and you should be able to lay it down there nice and easy. So that's my system that I use in small water. I've also used it in small creeks out in California in the Sierra for cutthroat, and it works great out there as well. Any place where you're going to be making really short casts and you might have a situation where you can't get a lot of fly line out the end of your rod, it's definitely going to help by adding some weight to the system and still being able to deliver your fly in a really nice way. So that is my system. If you have any questions, definitely post up, send me an email. If you want to check out the article that goes along with this, go to wildtroutchronicles.wordpress.com, and yeah, that's what it is. And you can check out the article that goes with this video. Like I said, if you have any questions, definitely post up, and I'll get back to you and answer anything. I'll try to put a link to the Furl Leader website. Again, I don't have anything to do with that company, but it's a great product, and I've been using it for a long time with a lot of success, and I really like it. So anglers, get out there and fish more, stress less.